Positive Spin, presenting positive, innovative, and solution-oriented news from around the world. On today's show, we'll see an interview with Sergio Duarte, UN Undersecretary General for Disarmament, conducted by Bill Miller of Global Connections Television. And we'll experience the global peace festivals around the world with their cultural diversity and inspiring humanitarian service programs. And then we'll learn how Goldman Environmental Prize recipient Olga Speranskaya successfully organized thousands of people in 9 countries to address the Soviet legacy of toxic chemicals in the environment.
Every year, people from around the world celebrate the United Nations International Day of Peace. This year's special theme is disarmament, and our associate Bill Miller has a special interview with Sergio Duarte, the United Nations Undersecretary General for Disarmament, at the UN Studios in New York City.
My guest today is an expert in an area that is of extreme importance to us, and that's in the proliferation of nuclear weapons, but also in the control of small arms. Mr. Ambassador Sergio Duarte is the High Representative for the United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs. Ambassador Duarte is a Brazilian national who represented Brazil as ambassador to Nicaragua, China, Canada, Austria, and various other countries. Ambassador Duarte, we're talking today about 2 very important topics, obviously, with nuclear proliferation, nuclear weapons. Now, when we think of nuclear weapons, we think of these horrific weapons that can create so much devastation. If we just put them in comparison to what happened in World War II, let's think back to that horrific experience where over 60 million people died, Europe lay in ruins, parts of Asia had been destroyed. It was a tremendous suffering going on around the world. Yet during World War II, they used conventional weapons. They used weapons that would not begin to classify as nuclear. Today, of course, we had the 2 atomic bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But to talk a bit about how we should perceive nuclear weapons today in comparison to the devastation that took place in Europe and Asia, and that was horrible at that time, but in comparison, if we had an exchange of nuclear weapons today, it would be far more devastating than what we've had. We would have nuclear winter, we would have perhaps the elimination of the human race, but put that in perspective for us if you could.
Well, it's very hard to put in perspective because the only example we have, or the only 2 examples we have, is the destruction in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And these were comparatively small nuclear weapons. One of those weapons, taken by 1 airplane, was sufficient to kill and destroy upwards of 200,000 people at the same stroke. You would need hundreds of carpet bombings from World War II to have the same effect. And not to speak of the radiation, lingering radiation, and the destruction of human beings continuously for decades after the strike. So I think it's very hard to compare. I think there is no comparison. And because of that, it is that nuclear weapons are so much different from any other types of weapons of mass destruction, like chemical weapons or biological weapons, in the way they destroy. And this is why their existence is today the main threat to mankind as a whole. It's not only to countries specifically, but to mankind. I think we have to do something, and of course the international community has been trying to do something about that. The United Nations has been trying, of course, to do something about that. But we are only in the beginning, I would say, of our successes.
Well, there are some rays of hope that are out there right now, and of course you mentioned the United Nations a minute ago. We'll talk about that, and also talk about a recent meeting between the President of the United States and the President of the Russian Federation. But let's talk about what the UN is doing. I know Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has developed a 5-point proposal on how to deal with the nuclear proliferation, nuclear arms. What are some of those points, and what is your office doing to help move this discussion and to implement them?
Well, the first point of his proposal deals with the need for the countries, particularly those who possess nuclear weapons, to comply with their obligations. They have assumed obligations particularly under the Non-Proliferation Treaty. to work towards a world free of nuclear weapons. And of course, those who possess those weapons are the ones that bear the most responsibility. But all countries that are parties to the Treaty on Non-Proliferation, and these are virtually all countries in the world, with 3 exceptions, they have an obligation to continue working to that. For a number of years, we had a sort of a stalemate in the main body charged with those negotiations, which is the Conference on Disarmament in Geneva. And now, because of the change in attitude in some of the most important countries, the most important possessors of nuclear weapons, we have a ray of hope that things may move again. So the first, to come back to Secretary General's proposal, the first proposal had to do with the need to comply, to observe the obligations that countries have assumed under international treaties.
Countries that could have developed nuclear weapons. In fact, some of them did and then gave them up. And of course, the ones that come to mind are like Argentina and South Africa, different ones like that, who were moving in that direction to develop nuclear technology, but decided it was not in their best interest to do so. Why do you think they decided that?
Yeah, because I think that they decided that their security was better served by not having the weapons, those kinds of weapons, than by having them. But you have to make distinctions also. South Africa did possess the weapon and gave it away. Mm-hmm. Some of the countries that composed the former Soviet Union also possessed the weapons in their territory. They had them there and they gave it back. They decided that, again, their security was better served by giving away the weapons, giving back the weapons to Russia, than to keep them for themselves. You mentioned Argentina and, of course, my own country, Brazil. In that case, there was not a case of deciding not to have the weapons. Not any of these 2 countries was in the path of developing weapons. They had certainly certain capabilities. But what they did was something very important, which was to enhance the confidence-building measures so that neither of the 2 would, be in a way to be deceived by the other. So that they created a system of bilateral joint accountability of their nuclear establishments and what they do. So today, and this, by the way, created the foundation for Mercosur, for the development of wider commercial ties between the 2 countries and the whole south of South America. It was very important for South America that the creation of confidence measures. And then again, they had decided long ago that their security did not depend on nuclear weapons. And I think that those who possess nuclear weapons today should come to the same conclusion.
Most assuredly.
Let there be peace. Let there be peace. Let there be peace. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Please join us as we sing for peace. Peace on earth, as is how it was meant to be. With God as our Father, brothers are we. Let me walk with my brother in perfect harmony. September 21st is the United Nations International Day of Peace. Celebrate peace in your life. Create peace in your community. On behalf of children everywhere, we thank you.